Hi everyone, welcome to Build with Shreya. Today we are at the GIIC, which is happening at the XCCA, which is an amazing venue near Brandenburg gates. And we have a really good line of guests today who we're talking to in depth around innovation that's going to happen with the Indo-German partnership coming along in more of a phygital sense.
Utkarsh, what you're building almost feels poetic. It's like a digital twin of a physical world. It's an attempt to eliminate surprise and detect the defects before they become the disaster, right? So, if you can tell us a little bit about your journey, what made you start DronaMaps, and how did you find the problem statement to work with?
Okay, well, that's a good question. I don't think we've covered that a lot before. Um, I went to Johns Hopkins for studying computer science and specialized in computer integrated surgery. At the time, while Hopkins has a very big med school focus, my faculty advisor, Dr. Ben Langmaid, was actually one of the genetics professor at school. Back early years into the college days, we ended up working on some experiments and some courses where we were, for the first time in my life, I was exposed to utilizing large servers to be able to process the genetic data and on the human genome project, the 6 billion base pair long human genome project, and then being able to search and splice and do all of those things with the genomic data. So I think that was very curious, that was very interesting, because the way that we were utilizing these servers for the first time in my life, I was very fascinated that there is a machine that would be running for a week, 5 to 7 days at 100% CPU, and it would have maybe a terabyte of RAM, and I had never in my life seen a terabyte of RAM before. So I became very, very fascinated with systems that were so large that you could quite literally not even open them on your laptop. You would require absolutely massive, humongous servers to be able to do that. So that's what caught the fancy. From there, I started working on some other technologies like photogrammetry. And Johns Hopkins again ends up being the inventing institute of a very key technology in the space called Poisson surface reconstruction, and by a professor in the CS department itself, Dr. Kazdan. So with through those exposures, I think I ended up building up or deciding rather that what I want to do with the rest of my life after college, and I ended up picking up these two or three technologies, combining them, and then brought all of that back home. Kind of wanted to return back home, having studied in the US and staying there for about 7 8 years, and then coming back to be able to build up companies and technologies which basically took us into a scaled up journey of deep tech, being able to bring the deep tech out from the lab and out into the world. So I think that's where the inspiration came from. That's where the humble beginnings of DronaMaps kind of started off, with the deep tech and the learnings and the curve that we started doing.
You used your first drone to map a very huge public event, and so what unexpected insights did it reveal that a normal human eye would have missed otherwise?
So that's a very interesting perspective, because drones typically, from an aerial or a bird's eye point of view, typically are able to see patterns that somebody on the land or the terrestrial viewpoint is not able to see. For instance, when we did Ayodhya in 2016, that was the first city that we mapped, and then did the entire live response for the Ayodhya Savan Jhula Mela in 2016. 30 lakh people had visited. Typically, in the preceding 10 years of the festival being held every year, there were at least a few deaths, like 10 to 12 deaths on average. We ended up bringing that count down to zero, because we could respond very quickly of anybody intending to jump off of a bridge. And it sounds very ridiculous, but in Ayodhya, when within the height of the Hindu culture, when people are trying to jump for moksha, that's actually a very legit thing. It actually happens
Really?
more frequently than you would imagine. So we ended up bringing that count down to zero. That was one. The second was being able to manage crowd control and being able to act as buffer zones before something becomes a stampede, because Ayodhya is a 5 square kilometer
Yeah.
city. Pushing 30 lakh people into that small of an city makes it completely packed. People were sleeping out on the streets and on the highways. Now, being able to recognize where forces need to be deployed, where management needs to be done better so that something, a crowded situation, does not turn into a stampede, that the bridge on which everyone's, for instance, standing, that the bridge is not going to buckle down, that some untoward incident doesn't happen. So I think drones, and several drones in that case, like we were doing the swarm technology back in 2016, so several drones at one time being able to coordinate and being able to give you the aerial viewpoint as well as the analytics and alerts early on was quite fundamental to why this Operation Egret, as it was called, turned into zero casualties. And the festival was very well managed. We got commendation letters from the government at the time. And because of the way that the technology was able to,
Yes.
do things that somebody on the ground wouldn't have been able to.
Definitely. I think as the world is becoming increasingly uncertain, I think a technology like yours can really help people, governments be prepared
Yes.
in case of any untoward circumstances. So your company builds digital twins for massive highways. So how is it better than a high resolution video to, let's say, an asset manager of the highways?
So NHAI, which is our largest client at the date, National Highway Authority of India, NHAI used to utilize drones to be able to record exactly that, high resolution videos beforehand. But see, the problem statement with videos is that the perspective is linked, as we will also realize with this podcast. When you're doing a video, you can't change the camera angle after having recorded the video.
Right.
If tomorrow you decide that, okay, maybe I want to look at Utkarsh from this side and not from this side, you can't suddenly change the video without having to re-record the entire thing. That's the first problem. The second problem is analytics and positioning really work well when we are trying to do mapping. So the our product name, our company name, right, DronaMaps, it centers around map making as a fundamental aspect of analyzing the world around us. Now, why maps? Why not videos? Because videos do not solve the perception problem. Videos are an input to the perception problem. What I mean to say by that is a video is not a map. You need to be able to locate objects from within a video, place them accurately geospatially somewhere, and then be able to make your analysis. Now, when we're doing video, we cannot, no matter how we try, we cannot get down to a millimeter level accuracy. So that's where the 3D photogrammetry and these technologies come in, because the 3D maps that we end up making, they're typically very, very highly accurate. They're at centimeter scale accuracy with the absolute accuracies to plus minus 4 millimeters. Now, those accuracies can only be achieved when we are trying to do a 3D mapping kind of an exercise, which is survey grade accurate. Now, survey grade accuracy is required because building of a highway or analysis of a highway, which is a very large engineering project and with thousands of crores at stake, you want to be extremely accurate with your measurements. You cannot be like, okay, that maybe this is 20 kilometers, it could be 19.5, it could be 100 meters plus or minus. No, it's gonna like take a lot of money to be able to cover those 100 kilometers. So your accuracy has to be down to that level such that the engineering division can actually utilize these analytics in the first place. If the engineering division, I would probably be hard put to find any engineer anywhere in the world who would be depending on video as a technology to be able to make accurate measurements, right? So vision doesn't work that way. Computer vision
Yeah.
algorithms don't work that way. So keeping that in mind, I think mapping was the way to go. When we started doing digital twins of national highways, we ended up not just recording the state as is, but also delivering a product which was 3D in nature, which was measurement compatible right on the browser itself, right within the application itself. You can measure down to the last millimeter, down to the last centimeter. You can do all kinds of height, area, volumetric measurements. You can estimate quantities. You can see what the construction progress is. You can see what the bridge construction progress is, for instance, any structures, culverts, bridges, and railway overbridges, and so on. So these become the fundamental technology that embeds back into the engineering division, because that's where the real work happens. So you don't just have to be able to see that, okay, my highway is built now.
Yeah.
You need to be able to test it. You need to be able to certify it. You need to be able to measure it. You need to be able to, at the end of all of it, clear the financials and the bills for it.
Right, correct. So during COVID-19, DronaMaps actually created command centers for state governments. And so, how did the accuracy and the speed of your geospatial platform help the authorities manage the crisis in a better fashion?
So in COVID, actually, we were not so much focusing on the 3D photogrammetry aspect of
Okay.
things, but we were doing a lot of maps and the disease spread analytics. So we were core into epidemiology domain at that time. The idea was that Johns Hopkins, actually our alma mater, had launched a global COVID dashboard. So when we started visiting, like when we started speaking to our clients at the time, they said that okay, maybe you can take inspiration from that and build up something which is much more Indian, much more specific over here. So we ended up building that. Then we also worked with Johns Hopkins to be able to, get some cross data back into it, and with the University of Oxford and with IIT Madras, the director, now director Dr. Kamakoti. So when we integrated all of these technologies, what we ended up with was live tracking of oxygen trucks, which was a very big crisis at the time of COVID second wave in India. We were tracking the disease spread of COVID-19 as well as mucormycosis, the black fungus that took over. And so being able to do the R naught and disease epidemic analysis and spread analytics across different populations in a district center, for instance, Jalandhar, if it has the disease spread out only in the town, only in the ULB, the urban local body, or rather has it gone out to the entire district of nearly 2000 square kilometers of area? So where does lockdown need to be imposed? Because you want to cause the minimum amount of disruption to the citizenry, at the same time have the maximum effectiveness from the administration. So being able to do analytics like this, which were geospatial in nature, which were very very particular, down to the last person that was being affected, being able to track their movements, enforce quarantines, being able to ensure that oxygen supply and treatments for mucormycosis were reaching on time and effectively across the entire states. So we did about 11 states at peak at the time. And so across all of these states, we were doing all of these analytics and giving all of this data to the authorities in charge. So that was nearly 23 districts in Punjab, and nearly about, if I remember correctly, 50-55 odd districts in Rajasthan, several in Chhattisgarh, Meghalaya. So a bunch of states, and with all of their district programs linked to that.
And so, what lessons from this experience do you think can drive global urban resilient programs, and especially when talking about Germany and India, smart infrastructure programs? So, what are your 2 cents from this experience, and how do you think that kind of a partnership can come into fruition?
So we believe in analytics, right? We believe in data. The more the data, the better the decision making from any context. In that sense, when we're looking at infrastructure, I don't find India and Germany to be very different in that
I
aspect.
see.
When we look at national highways, for instance, the Indian expressways, the Delhi Mumbai Expressway, the Yamuna Expressway, the Bangalore Chennai Expressway, have very similar road quality conditions, contracts, the nature of the concession, and the materials being used similar to the Autobahn in Germany. Very similar architectures, very similar design standards, very similar quality parameters, and very similar usage by the users of the road. So what we can do to be able to very minutely analyze all of these areas, all of these infrastructure projects, very different, in different economies, different countries, but still engineering and civil engineering being the same, being able to work across all of these technical standards, being able to deliver on that. So I think that's the key that we are trying to drive. To your point, specifically between Germany and India, the interplay that we are able to see, there's a huge market. So far, DronaMaps has been operating with in the B2G space, but there's a huge market in the B2B space for these infrastructure projects, because at the end of the day, there's some private player which is making roads. Like in Europe, Acciona is a very big player which is developing a lot of infrastructure across nearly 20-25 odd countries. So being able to work with companies like that to be able to manage their assets, being able to map them repeatedly in centimeter scale 3D, delivering those insights and automated analytics, reducing the time cost of human labor being deployed. So in this current age of AI, the way I look at it is we should eliminate any forms of hard labor to the extent possible by utilizing advanced technology like AI, robots, drones, and all of these things. It will not just increase our actionability on the materials and the environment that we interact with, it will make it more sustainable, it will make it more advanced, and it will repurpose us. Because at the end of the day, The person who has to make the decisions with all of this data is the human. For instance, going back 30 years or 50 years, somebody could have said, if internet's going to come along, all the jobs are going to get disrupted. What are humans going to
But
do
they
then?
did say that.
They did say that. And look at today, right? I mean, 70% of the Indian population is on Facebook. And so internet, even though it did disrupt a few jobs,
Of
it
course.
kind of repurposed everyone into newer capabilities, because now you have a Google at your fingertips. You're able to work a lot more in the information age that we have today. And so similarly, AI would affect that, robotics would affect that, drones would affect that, any kind of high technology when it percolates into the citizenry, not just in India but also Germany, European Union, and all of this. So regulations can differentiate depending on the geography, but the effect more or less remains the same. So we plan to take advantage of those cycles.
And if I were to ask you of some specific partnerships or collaborations that DronaMaps is actually looking for with Germany, what would they be? What would the nature of those kind of partnerships will be?
Well, that's quite a clear target for us. So number one, obviously, is the Autobahn. So the administration for that. Number two, then becomes the private concessionaires who are doing the A5, A9, A7 routes of that. Number three is a very interesting one. We've been looking at companies which do rural roads. So German rural roads actually are very much at the same state that Indian rural roads are at. They're full of potholes. They have a lot of cracks in them. The fundamental infrastructure is breaking down, and yet they spend an insane amount of money year after year to be able to maintain that. So somewhere the entire problem statement is breaking down. The
Correct.
entire solutioning of the problem statement is breaking down right in front of our eyes. And somehow, even with all the advanced technology of Germany, of automobiles, of scanning, of lidars and whatnot, we are somehow not able to arrive at that place where we are able to guarantee a good infrastructure to the citizens in either country. So we plan to do that entire route. We plan to work with the government here. We plan to work with the private concessionaires, and not just national highways, but also state and municipal roads, the district roads, the rural roads of Germany and of European Union. So we are starting off with Germany, Italy. So Germany has Autobahn as a national highways. Italy has Autostrat, and then Spain, which also has Carreteras del Estado, which are the national state roads of Spain. So being able to work between all these two or three countries, entering the European market for the road analytics, for better, cheaper, faster road analytics, not just once a month, but we're trying to increase that frequency from once a month to maybe once a week, then once a day, and eventually a continuous monitoring across the entire land series. So that's the vision that we are going towards, and I'm sure Germany, being the industrial powerhouse, would need that.
And when we talk about that, I think something that makes Germany or Europe unique in terms of technology is the GDPR compliances.
Yes.
So how do you see those regulations coming into picture as far as DronaMaps is concerned?
So GDPR very specifically requires that, one, you process the data in Europe, and two, your users should be able to access the data. Now, there's a key distinction here. DronaMaps is not a consumer company, so we do not have 100 million users who need to download their data. So GDPR would be more applicable to that. However, the GDPR compliance is applicable to all the companies. So we have been GDPR compliant for a few years now. The international regulations, as they happen, they're able to get a company to mature up and comply with the local regulations, which makes it a better cultural fit, I would say. So we absolutely plan to be cognizant of these regulations, like the European CA, the Civil Aviation Authority regulations on drones, on geospatial data, on satellite data, on high resolution data using dash cams or drones. And then GDPR, there's also a bunch of different ISO standards that we have to comply with. So information security standards, personally identifiable information standards, and through all of these, combining all of that is what brings out the end product.
So mapping almost 20,000 kilometers per month is no small feat. And combining that and marrying that with the conditions that India provides, with dust, with extreme weather conditions, it makes the value proposition even more unique, which I think even the most advanced industrial systems in Germany can learn from. So if there were a couple of takeaways for German counterparts, what would they be from DronaMaps as a technology that has stood the test of time, as I may say. Yeah.
Thank you. So I think the biggest story, and I think we've seen that repeatedly in the themes of India and Germany as a collaboration, India is able to provide massive scale. Whenever you start to deploy any technology at massive scale, adoption becomes the first challenge. Like you said, the adoption of technology has to go through all the dusty atmospheres, high temperatures, hot summer, peak summer times, marine
And
environments,
still predict millimeter
level
with the
accuracies,
millimeter.
and
Yeah.
have the drones being operated not get overheated. So all of those challenges come. But I think the biggest takeaway that you're suggesting that we could maybe share with our German counterparts would be cost. It would be the cost per unit economics. See, I'll again bring back AI as a reference here. What did AI do what did ChatGPT do as an LLM agent in terms of the information age that Google could not do? So Google as a search engine was able to give you all the search results indexed, but you can go on chat gpt and be like, you can ask it a direct question. Can you analyze all the material on the internet and tell me the key three takeaways of German and Indian companies working together? It's going to be able to parse all that information in a matter of seconds and be able to deliver that information to you. So what did that at the end of the day do? It brought you the saving of time. Time saved equals to cost saved because you're running your servers that many hours lesser. You're running the lighting infrastructure and all the employees that many hours lesser. At the end of the day, it is a per unit cost per unit metric that has come so less with AI that you're able to scale up quite phenomenally.
Yes.
So that's what India has allowed us to do.